Galbrena an unnecessary addition to the meta? Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. I should start off this video by saying, this video inherently isn't fair. We don't know what Galbrena does yet, and she hasn't been officially revealed yet. We have literally no clue what her kit does. So, you can technically take this all with an insane grain of salt, because I can't really say if she's objectively an unnecessary unit or not, based on our current non-existent official information. We don't know what this character does yet. So, with that in mind, I'm looking at this more from a different perspective. In my last video, I was more so saying that you should be wary because her banner placement isn't the best, considering that Cheetah is going to be a thing soon, and we also have to consider that wuwa 3.0 is coming up. However, I now want to look at this from the fact that she is a fusion character. I did highlight this a little bit last time, but I want to talk about this a little bit more, because I do feel like Galbrena could end up being a somewhat unnecessary addition to the roster. Now okay, if she ends up being really strong and becomes a new best in slot for the element, that's great. But the thing is, I just kind of doubt that we're going to already get a new best in slot for the element. Someone did once point out to me, but simply offering a different playstyle sometimes is enough. And that is completely valid if you think that, because yes, good point. It's not like every character has to be bringing something new to the meta in particular, and sometimes just offering a new playstyle is more than enough. But I do feel like fusion is one of those niches that is quite oversaturated, and making her any other element would have been preferable. Now okay, I will say this is one of the few times where Kuro did genuinely give a character an element that matches their character design and their sort of vibe. Very rare instance of Kuro actually making sense of elemental choices. Insane. So I guess you could say that yes, fusion does fit her as a character, but let's be real. When has this ever been something that Kuro has cared about? They very much will give a character that looks like one specific element an entirely different element just because they kind of think it fits better, or because it looks better off the gameplay, or because of meta reasons. So whenever you take that into consideration, I just think another fusion character is not really all that necessary, especially whenever I do feel like elements are becoming more and more relevant these days. Before, I didn't really feel like they were that big of a deal, because the only thing you really had to deal with were perhaps boss resistances. I felt like the TOA stage buffs or debuffs, while they were nice or not that good, depending on whichever side you were on, if you were receiving the buff or receiving the debuff, sure, they were there, but they weren't really a make or break. They could be if you were playing an especially weak DPS or if your character just wasn't really that well built yet, but either way, they weren't really a run decider for most people. However, with Whimpering Wastes, having elemental resistances on the enemy absolutely kills your run. And my own account is very heavily invested into Spectro because I have an S1R1 Zani on my personal account. So I have very much felt the pain of being hard countered whenever Spectro resistance is up in endgames. It is something that you feel when you don't have good enough coverage. So, with that in mind, if you're somebody that already has so many fusion characters, what exactly is the point of Galbrena? And once again, this entire argument can just be dismantled by two things. A, offering a different unique playstyle is enough, which is completely fair, or B, it is just unfair to talk this way about a character when we literally don't have any information on them yet. So, in those two cases, yeah, fair enough, I get that. Though I still can't help but point out that there are so many units that we are missing that could be very nice additions to the meta, and I feel like adding another fusion DPS into the mix, that's just not really doing much. And it's fine, I understand that some elements are just gonna get more attention than others, but you need to consider this. Freaking Glacio hasn't gotten a new 5-star limited DPS since Carlotta, who released in 2.0. Might I remind you that she is basically your only option for a good Glacio DPS, because if you're not using Carlotta, well, you're sure as heck not using Ling Yang, that's for sure. So, you basically only have her as an option, and you could make the argument she still exists as a very strong option. There isn't really a need to replace her in the meta yet, because she still holds up ridiculously well, and basically everybody likes using the character, in which case, yes, fair enough. But in that case, why exactly are we adding another fusion character to the roster? We already have triple fusion as a thing. We have very strong fusion characters that can not only be played as DPSs, but be played in so many different teams. And this is sort of adding to my bafflement. For example, if we got another Spectro character, while we do already have plenty of Spectro units, I wouldn't actually consider that as weird, because while yes, it will be adding to the plethora that we already have, consider that the last two big Spectro 5-stars were negative status characters. Now Phoebe is indeed a very free-to-play friendly character because she can easily form a very free-to-play friendly team consisting of completely free characters. However, Zani is quite the opposite. She really wants a premium team and premium investment in order to feel good. And whenever you consider that somebody just might not be into negative statuses, and they may just simply prefer a playstyle that is more hypercarry-like, something like Jinshi, well then they're gonna get excited over the next Spectro DPS that is more in line with what they're generally wanting, or not even DPS. Imagine if we got a Spectro Jojo that could bring Jinshi back into the meta again. There are options there that could be interesting, but with Fusion, it would be wrong of me to say that we've explored everything, because no, we haven't. Galbrena is obviously going to bring a unique playstyle to the table, whatever her playstyle may end up being. However, let's be real, I do think that we have most grounds covered for the time being, and it's time to focus on other elements and bringing them up to snuff. Because while other elements might have good teams, like Forlova being a fantastic Havoc DPS with a really good triple Havoc team, you have to consider that those teams are a bit more niche. Not everybody's gonna go out of their way to pull Cantarella and Roshia for their Forlova specifically, while in Fusion's case, most characters that are a part of that element are quite versatile. Changli is a character that is completely skill dependent. Her level of value on your account is literally just going to scale off of how good you are as a player, and if you're good enough, then she is going to be one of the most valuable investments that you'll ever have thanked yourself for making. In Brent Wuthering Waves' case, sure, he isn't really that relevant if you don't have a signature weapon, but if you do, it is hilarious the amount of situations that you're able to use the guy in, both on his own, with Changli, or even with Lupa, and using him as his own main DPS. In fact, the latter is very strong, because Lupa's outro skill facilitates Brent's DPS being really solid. So, when you consider that all of the limited 5-stars that we have are decently flexible, perhaps not Lupa, but she can still work with Encore, who is literally a good standard DPS, why do we need another Fusion right now? I also need you to consider, Triple Fusion is literally one of the top meta teams at the minute. It's extremely versatile, has very few weaknesses, is amazing in Whimpering Wastes, is amazing in TOA, and I literally have a friend who was able to clear Dragon of Dirge, who is Fusion resistant in TOA 4 using Triple Fusion. It is a very strong team, so I don't really see the need to add another one to the mix. And okay, sure, she could end up doing something that completely exceeds my expectations. I just don't really see the need at the minute. And the thing is, this is such an easy fix. Just give her literally any other element that we need more of. Glacio would have honestly worked for her. I don't think anybody would be like, oh my goodness, she doesn't look Glacio. I mean, sure, she definitely looks Fusion in her splash art, but I think if you just showed me the character design and nothing else, I would think that character is Glacio. In fact, I thought that when I first saw her, the sort of light bluish hair and the blue tones, that made me assume that she was going to be ice related in some way, shape, or form. Now the fact that she's all fiery is really awesome, and I definitely really like her drip art. However, it does still puzzle me. I just kind of find it to be a silly decision, considering that we only recently finally got another good limited 5-star Electro DPS to replace Shang Liao, who was basically trapped as being the best Electro DPS that we currently had access to until he was finally able to be put to rest by Augusta. And that took a while! Shang Liao is literally a 1.2 character. Augusta came out in 2.6. We had to wait a long time in order to get that release. So, whenever you consider that, it makes it even more curious as to why we're constantly getting fusions, and whenever you consider that there are other elements like Glacio that get constantly neglected, and where there are openings for other good units, like a Spectro Judge, it just makes me wonder, what are we doing here? Now okay, Galbrena is obviously going to have fantastic gameplay, and she is a 2.x unit. This naturally means that she's going to end up being strong. There isn't really any 2.x main DPS character that feels weak. Genuinely try and name me one main DPS in 2.x that is not at the very least a good DPS. They are all, at the very least, quite strong. I would say that all around they've all been very well balanced, because you can basically choose to main any of them, and they're gonna feel strong provided that you have decent enough gear for them. All around, I think that after Galbrena, Crow definitely needs to take a break from making fusion characters. I think that with Galbrena it's fine, after all, Triple Fusion is one particular team playstyle, and all of his characters offer one particular playstyle. It would be fair enough to say that we don't really have a true hyper carry for Fusion, and I suppose there is Encore, but that's a standard DPS, so fine, she is filling in a relevant niche. That is completely fair. However, I do think that after this, we gotta get another Glacio DPS in here, man, because it is ridiculous how we basically don't have a singular one. We really need some more in here. With that being taken into consideration, I have no doubt in my mind that Galbrena is going to end up having really cool gameplay. I'm sure she's going to end up being a really cool character. Absolutely no doubt about that. I do still question the relevancy of her addition to the meta, and I will say that there is one particular group of people that she's definitely going to be good for if she ends up being a fusion DPS. People who don't already have one. Because I will say that Triple Fusion does ask you to have a couple of 5 stars. Now, we are gonna have to see how self-sufficient Galbrena is, if she really wants the ever fusions, or if she really wants her dedicated 5-star support if she has one, or if she really is fine on a specific 4-star. That's stuff that we're just gonna have to wait to see. And like I said, I wasn't really commenting on our concrete value in this video because we literally are not able to do that at the minute. There is no concrete information. However, with that being said, I do still think it is fair to point out it is a little strange that we are getting the 50th fusion unit in 2.x. Lupa was out not that long ago in my opinion, at least whenever you consider how many fusions we currently have in the game. But how about yourself? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully this video is able to tell you why Galbrena might end up being an unnecessary addition to the Wuthering Waves roster. This has been Juice, signing out, and perhaps she is necessary after all because she looks like an S tier or a farmer.